Have you ever wondered what happens after death, or what's about to happen to the world this May? In this video, you'll hear the true and chilling story of Heather Collins, a nurse who died for 6 minutes, was taken to heaven, and received 4 earth-shattering prophetic revelations from Jesus. Get ready to hear about the sky bleeding, a false leader emerging, and an invisible army rising. Like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which city you're watching from. My name is Heather Collins. I am 42 years old, a neonatal nurse in Asheville, North Carolina. I've always been skeptical of near-death experience stories, until the day death sat beside me. It was April 21st, 2025, a Monday. I had been in the hospital since 5 in the morning. That was my 3rd sleepless night. Long shifts, a bout of neonatal infection, and I refused to abandon the babies. It was when I left work, at 9:02 in the morning, that everything happened. I got into my car. I remember putting on my seatbelt and feeling suddenly dizzy, like the ground had disappeared. My fingers were shaking and I tried to take a deep breath, but it was like the air had been sucked out of me. My heart exploded with pain, like an electric punch from inside my chest. The last thing I saw were the blurry trees outside the window. And then, nothing. I didn't hear sirens. I didn't see paramedics. I just saw myself outside, above the car, as if floating inside a glass bubble. I saw my body leaning in the driver's seat. I saw a security guard running across the parking lot. But what struck me was the silence. It wasn't an empty silence. It was absolute, peaceful, as if all the pain in the world had gone away, as if I had returned to where I had come from, but never knew. And then the wind came, but it wasn't the wind of earth, it was something alive, as if each breeze whispered a forgotten name, and mine was among them. I was taken. I neither walked nor flew. I just went. Within seconds, I was standing in front of a light so powerful that my memories began to burn, but it didn't hurt. It was as if everything I thought was important, fears, guilt, titles, melted away. What was left was essence. And then he appeared. Not like a painting, not like a ghost. Jesus, alive, real, irrefutable, with eyes that crossed time and loved me at the same time. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. I just cried. Tears without a body, tears of the soul. He came closer, and his voice did not come through my ears. It exploded inside me like music spoken in blood. Heather, you will see, and you will come back. Before I could understand, a scroll of light began to unfurl in the air. It wasn't paper. It was like a fabric of eternity, alive, pulsating, burning. Every part of it seemed to vibrate with truths I couldn't yet bear. But Jesus was with me, and he said to me, "May will be the beginning. The world is not ready, but you have to tell it." My spirit trembled. I wanted to run, but there was no escape there, only revelation. Jesus reached out his hand, and as he touched the scroll of light, the space around us changed. We didn't walk. We were thrown into a scene that seemed both present and future. I was floating above Europe, and everything below was vivid, as if I were watching the planet take its last breath before something exploded. I saw cities: Paris, with its busy avenues; Berlin, covered by soft clouds; Rome, golden in the morning sun; ordinary people going to work, drinking coffee, distracted. And then, the sky changed. Suddenly, as if a veil had been torn from the atmosphere, the blue turned red. It was not the red of a sunset. It was a deep red, denso, vivo, as if the sky itself was bleeding. Waves of color pulsed like celestial heartbeats. And within seconds, the earth reacted. There were screams, sirens, children pointing, planes diverting. A newsreel floated before me. Pale-faced reporters called it a solar anomaly. Scientists speculated about coronal mass ejections, geomagnetic storms, possible faults in the Earth's magnetic field. But Jesus, beside me, just whispered with serene sadness, "They will call it science, but it is a sign. I looked, astonished, and felt that that red sky was more than a phenomenon. It was a spiritual alarm, a call, and I soon understood who the call was for. I saw tiny churches, some hidden, some abandoned. I saw groups gathered in basements, old monks in huts in the Alps, young men with guitars praying in the fields of Hungary. They were kneeling, weeping, praying as if the world were at war, and it was. The red sky wasn't meant to scare. It was meant to wake up. "This is the first shaking," Jesus said, "not of buildings but of hearts." And then I saw something incredible. From the midst of these prayers emerged invisible flames. They did not destroy, lit up, as if each cry activated a spiritual beacon. Some raised their hands and began to pray in tongues. Others just wept silently, but heaven responded to each gesture. That's when I realized it wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The dawn of something much greater, something hidden from the eyes of the world. A call to the remnant, the forgotten, the ones who pray in the dark, the ones who still believe. And even amid the beauty of this awakening, Jesus' gaze grew more serious. The scroll had not yet finished unrolling. They woke up with blood in the sky. But what comes next will be swifter than the tide. And then everything started, moving again, a new scenery, a familiar city, Venice. We were over Venice, the city of bridges, waters, sighs. But nothing there was romantic. The sky was still tinged with red in the background, as if that color no longer wanted to leave the world. The scroll pulsed. Between me and Jesus and what I saw next took my breath away. Tourists smiled in gondolas filmed with cell phones, took selfies with Venetian masks. It seemed like an ordinary day, until the ground shook. Not like an earthquake. It was something more subtle, as if the city itself was sighing for the last time. Jesus said nothing. He just looked straight ahead with a pain in his eyes that cut more than any words. It was then that the water level started to rise, but not like we see in common floods. It was sudden, violent, apocalyptic. The tide didn't just rise, it exploded. Entire streets disappeared in minutes. Canals overflowed as if releasing something, imprisoned for centuries. Tourists screamed, ran to the tallest buildings, filmed, laughed nervously, called unexpected weather event. But I knew. That wasn't weather, it was judgment. I saw St. Mark's Basilica. The gold of its ceiling glowed strangely, as if it knew its time had come. Water broke through the doors, the stained glass windows shattered like ice, and the bells rang out, on their own, drowning in the pain of a city drowning in its own arrogance. And then, he appeared. A woman, about my age. Wet hair, hands raised, eyes closed. She was inside the church with water up to her waist, alone, praying. She didn't shout, she didn't order, I just prayed. At that moment, everything stopped. Chaos froze around her. The waters stilled as if given a silent command. The sky stilled. A beam of light fell directly on that unknown woman, and I heard, not from her but from the sky, "What is built without justice collapses in a day, but intercession can still stay my hand." My soul trembled. I understood there, without a doubt, prayer is invisible warfare. The world laughs, ignores, despises, but when an intercessor stands up, the heavens listen. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder and spoke firmly. This is the second shock. The structures crumble, but those who prostrate themselves remain. The scroll still glowed. It wasn't over. The next vision began to emerge. This time there was no water, no red sky. But there were eyes, and they were looking right at me. The view changed. The sound of water stopped. The red sky disappeared. Now I was in a white marble room with giant windows that looked out over a city I didn't recognize. It could have been Washington, or maybe Jerusalem. It was a place built to impress, but there was something wrong in the air, something my soul recognized before my thoughts reached it. And then he walked in. A man. Not a politician, not a general, but a leader. Spiritual. His face was sereno. His voice was sweet. His words seemed made of honey and hope. He spoke of peace, of unity between religions, of a world where no one would need any more doctrinal divisions. People around me were crying, applauding, bowing in reverence. I saw priests, rabbis, pastors of megachurches, monks in golden robes. All hugged this man as if he were the answer to centuries of chaos. But I saw something else. The shadows around him writhed. And there, where the eyes of the world saw light, my eyes, opened by God, the way snakes. They came out from under his cloak, crawled through his smile, danced among his sweet words. It was fascinating and monstrous. Jesus spoke softly beside me, almost like someone mourning a betrayal. This is the third shaking, the one that shines but does not burn, the one that preaches love but denies the cross. My spiritual body contracted in anguish. The man was now on a large stage, and crowds were gathering, including Christians. Some of the greatest names in modern faith were there on their knees, proclaiming that finally, God had sent someone to unite the world. But Jesus was crying. He will emerge in May, Heather. Crowds will acclaim him, but he will offer light without regret. He will speak of forgiveness, but silence the truth. He will seduce with sweetness, but his roots are poison. And then I saw a poster floating in the air, like a celestial, digital advertisement. May 2025, the era of new spiritual unification. And in the center, that face, the same man, the same lie. People followed him as if he were Christ himself, but I looked into his eyes, and so empty, like an abyss covered in makeup. And then, the scene changed again. But before it disappeared, I saw something that took my breath away. A child with a Bible in his backpack, riding a skateboard, alone, ignoring the hypnotized crowd. And Jesus said to me, "They are still mine. You will see them." The parchment began to burn with a new light, not of destruction, but of something about to be born. The light from the scroll grew until it swallowed the entire previous scene. I felt my spirit being pulled as if by a current of fire, but this fire did not burn. It was purifying. The pain, the fear, the confusion, it was all ripped away from me. What came next was unlike anything I had ever seen. Suddenly, I was over any American city. It could have been Cleveland, Tulsa, maybe Boise, it didn't matter. What mattered was what I was seeing. Ordinary people, in ordinary places, being taken over by something that came straight from the sky. A shoeless boy, maybe 12 years old, was standing on a street corner with his eyes closed. When he opened his mouth, what came out, it wasn't your voice. It was something that shook the ground. He declared the glory of God with such authority that cars stopped, people knelt, and a man fell to his knees crying in the middle of the crosswalk. In another scene, I saw an elderly woman, maybe in her 80s, in a nursing home, sitting alone. She was holding a rosary in her trembling hands. But when she began to pray, light exploded from within her. Nurses began to fall under conviction. A nursing assistant was healed of partial deafness. An evil spirit was cast out of a visitor who never understood why he lived in torment. Era revival. But without a stage. No expensive suits, no lights, no big screens, no celebrities of faith, only the Holy Spirit and the unlikely. I saw a man, probably a janitor, cleaning the floor of a school at night. He was softly singing an old hymn. When he ran the cloth over the floor, the hallway filled with golden smoke. The next day, teachers began to pray with the students without understanding why. Something had been activated there. No ads, no likes, no YouTube channel. Jesus pointed and said, "These are my invisible arsonists. They do not seek fame. They do not preach for applause, but I know them by name. They will set the world on fire." with repentance. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fly up to them and hug them. They were like sparks loose in a dry forest, ready to start a spiritual revolution that no government, no algorithms, and no media will be able to contain. And then I saw the boy with Down syndrome who healed with his hands, the girl who spoke with thunder, the illiterate old man who preached with more authority than any theologian. They didn't know they were great, but all of heaven applauded them. Jesus looked at me with eyes that burned like flames and said, "May will be the separation, but it will also be the birth. The time of purification has come. You need to tell this, Heather." The last part of the parchment began to fold. I knew what this meant. Two needed to go back. But first, something even deeper awaited me. The light around me began to dim. The celestial scroll, which had been vibrating with supernatural intensity until then, began to slowly bend. But I felt in my spirit, the revelation was not yet complete. Jesus came closer, so close that I could feel his presence washing over my soul like waves of peace and awe mingled together. And then he reached out his hand, not to show me something, but to touch me. When your finger touched my forehead, something inside me opened. I was sucked into a depth where time did not exist. I fell, but without pain. It was like passing through layers of invisible veils. Each layer brought forgotten sounds, the cries of women at war, the laughter of children in famine zones, the moans of souls lost in silence. And then, total darkness. But this darkness was not empty. It vibrated with human pain. There, in the center of this colorless place, I saw what appeared to be a large mirror made of smoke. As I approached, it began to show faces, thousands, millions, all looking down, carrying invisible weights like emotional zombies. I saw people I knew, I saw myself, and I heard the voice of Jesus, not as before. Now it tore dimensions. This is humanity without discernment, without eyes, without anchor, without repentance. Each face in the smoke represented someone who had traded truth for disguised comfort. I saw preachers who had given in to the system, young people who had rejected faith because of trauma, mothers who had given up hope. I saw multitudes following the one false shepherd from the previous topic, walking smiling towards an invisible precipice. I screamed. I wanted to reach them. I wanted to warn them. But they couldn't hear me. The spiritual mist around them was like concrete. Jesus said firmly, "They have ears, but they do not hear. They have eyes, but they do not see." But there is still time. The cry of my servants can tear this darkness apart. At that moment, I saw small cracks appearing in the smoke. And from each crack, light came out. Every time someone intercedes, preaches truthfully, loves selflessly, a crack forms. And little by little, some faces began to look up. Jesus turned to me, and now there was urgency on your face. He said something that burned in my chest like liquid fire. The enemy knows the date. The people are still asleep. May 2025 will be the milestone, but the clock is already ticking. The darkness began to fade. I saw the parchment again, now almost completely retracted. The feeling of to go back started to involve me. But before leaving that place, Jesus gave me something, a blue flame, delicate as a petal, but heavier than the world. Take this. It is the revelation. It will burn until you speak. Then everything started to fade away. The sky, the visions, the pain, the glory. It all receded, as if God were returning me to the world. The feeling of falling increased. I was being pulled up, not like falling in despair, but like someone being brought back to the surface after a dive into very deep water. The light around disappeared, and the music of heaven, that melody that cannot be heard with the ears, began to fall silent, like a choir saying goodbye. It was at that moment that I felt the blue flame that Jesus gave me. She was no longer in my hands, but inside me. She burned in silence. It was like carrying a piece of heaven, like a sacred secret pulsing in my chest. Every beat of my heart in the spiritual world seemed to scream, "Wake up, he's coming." And then, I came back. It was abrupt, violent, like being thrown back into a prison made of flesh. The light of the hospital invaded my eyes. Machines were beeping, voices screamed. A defibrillator went off. My lungs sucked in air as if swallowing the world. My body was writhing, but my soul was still leaf between veils and light. Someone shouted, "She's back." But I barely listened to them, because at that moment everything around me was different. I saw people in different colors. I saw a nurse with a gray mist over her shoulders, a doctor with a golden spark behind his eyes. The dimensions were no longer separate. The physical and spiritual world were overlapping. The Spirit of God was still whispering, as if the veil between the two worlds had not yet completely closed. I heard the echo of what had been shown to me, and with it an order, clear as the sun. May is the gateway. One cycle closes, another begins. The trumpet has already been blown, but few have discerned the sound. My hands were shaking. Doctors told me I had become 6 minutes without a heartbeat. They said it was a miracle. I knew it wasn't. It was a calling. I felt like a woman who had crossed a battlefield alone and returned with a message written in blood and light. But even surrounded by technology, science, and clinical explanations, my spirit couldn't shut up. The clock in heaven was ticking, and almost no one was paying attention. And the blue flame in my chest, it did not erase, on the contrary, began to grow. Jesus didn't show me that so that I would be silent. He sent me back as if he were putting a torch in the hands of someone lying in a field of the blind. May will not be just another month. May will be a turning point between those who sleep and those who wake up. Even after I returned, the echoes of eternity haunted me. No matter where I was, hospital, early morning silence, empty parking lot, I felt the time of heaven running, parallel with ours, as if there were an invisible clock counting the seconds to something irreversible. Every time I close my eyes, I see the number 5. 5 like the month of May, but it does not appear as an ordinary number. It vibrates like a silent siren, and around it an hourglass made of celestial fire spins in the air, dripping embers instead of sand. The blue flame inside me, the one Jesus gave me, began to pulsate stronger every time someone spoke about artificial peace, spirituality without the cross, or about a new time of unity between all beliefs. It was as if my spirit recognized Thales before the words even leave your mouth. It was then that I started to have visions even when awake. Not hallucinations, not memories, but open windows between dimensions. And what I saw in them confirmed everything. In one of them I saw a large stadium full of people in white clothes, singing, shouting for transformation. But in the center, there was the false anointed one, the one from topic 4, now with the world at his feet. There was no longer any doubt. He would manifest himself in May 2025 as a response to the 3 previous shocks: the sky bleeding, the water drowning, and the church dividing between truth and theater. In the vision, I saw the exact date of his public appearance being announced on a big screen. May 21st, 2025, the Global Unified Peace Initiative. Crowds celebrated, religious leaders danced, even sincere Christians seemed mesmerized by the sweetness of the promise. But I heard something else. In the background, an ancient voice, an ancient lament, a muted trumpet, saying, "If the foundation is not repentance, everything that is built will fall like chaff in the wind." I saw churches split in two, pastors arguing, families divided. Some chose truth, even in tears. Others chose comfort, smiling, not knowing they were walking away from the true light. But in the midst of all this, the remnant began to move. They had no positions, they had no microphones, But they had authority that came from heaven. They prayed silently on subways. They interceded in public squares. They spoke with conviction in coffee shops. And all around them little flames were ignited, the same flame that burned inside me. And that's when I realized God's clock does not measure time. It measures awakened hearts. Jesus whispered one last time as the vision dissolved. When the world says peace, listen for the thunder. When they shout light, look for the cross. And then everything went silent again. But the clock was still there. After the visions, a silence came over my spirit. But it was not the silence of complete peace. It was the silence of a heaven that holds its breath before acting. I felt something about to be released, something that it has already begun, but has not yet fully manifested itself. Like the breaking of an invisible wave that advances without the eyes noticing. And then Jesus showed me what he called the silent harvest. I was taken to a bird's eye view. I saw cities, big, small, forgotten, all with people walking around as if nothing was happening. But in the spirit, every street was vibrant. It was as if the world was being sifted, heart for heart, soul for soul. I saw workers in grocery stores, mothers washing dishes, teenagers with headphones on, all seemingly distracted but with restless spirits, as if something was calling them from within. And then I saw them. The bearers of the flame. Ordinary. Men and women. Some knew they were carrying the fire of heaven. Others had not yet realized it. But in all of them there was a holy urgency. They interceded, even without knowing exactly why. They knelt down out of nowhere. They felt heavy when they saw a lie being applauded. They cried when they heard an ordinary song. The Spirit of God was blowing on the humble, and this marked the beginning of something which will still explode this month. Jesus spoke firmly. The stage is already set, but my people will not perform on it. They will move like the wind among those who listen. I saw a vast golden field with millions of ripe ears of corn. The wind of the Spirit passed, and where it touched, invisible flames lit above their heads. There were no famous preachers. There were no platforms, just the sound of true surrender. But I also saw those who were in dark fields. They seemed to be harvesting something valuable, but their fruits crumbled in their hands. These followed the false leader, the one who preaches love without regret, light without renunciation, union without truth. They were intoxicated with sweet words, but what they ingested was dust. And then the tension rose. Jesus looked at me and said, "This month, the trigger will come. That which will push the lukewarm to one side or the other. Nothing will remain neutral. Nothing will be hidden. Those who know me will know." My spirit bowed within. I felt the weight of what he was saying. May is not over yet, and heaven is waiting for earth's response. I saw crowds beginning to move. Some were waking up. Others were running for cover. But among them, those who carried the flame were positioning itself, like invisible sentinels, like living trumpets. Jesus concluded with authority. The coming days will reveal those who are mine, not by what they say, but by what they faithfully endure. Get ready, because what is coming has already begun. And the sky closed over me like a curtain of smoke and gold. The sky dissolved into gold and mist. I felt like I was on the threshold, neither in heaven nor yet on earth. It was like standing on the edge of an abyss of light, a place between worlds. And there, Jesus looked at me one last time, not with sadness but with eternal weight in the eyes. Now you have seen, now you know. But knowing is not enough, you need to sound the alarm. At that instant, the blue fire within me pulsed like a living heart. I'd expanded, took my consciousness, burned my memory, sealed everything I had seen with something that human words could never translate. And then, he blew. It was no ordinary wind. He was the breath that sends, What a commission. What a mark forever. I felt as if my soul was thrown back to earth, tearing through veils, dimensions, and spiritual resistances. I screamed inside even without making a sound. They need to know. They need to know. The entire sky seemed to bend over the earth. There was a tense silence among the angels, like an army in formation awaiting the final order. And I knew, this order will be given later this month. May is not just a date. It is a spiritual portal, and we are in the middle of it. The world thinks it is just another ordinary month. But in the invisible, lines are being drawn, and the spiritual decisions made now will echo for generations. When I returned to my body, everything around me was noise, machines, doctors, voices, but inside me everything was flame. Everything was mission. I was alive, but carrying eternity inside the chest. Since that day I have carried within me an unbreakable certainty. Something is coming even in May. Something that will separate those who live by appearances from those who live by truth. Something that will shake structures, expose lies, and awaken the little ones, the remnants, to become living torches. If you are hearing this now, it is not by chance. Jesus is calling those who can still hear. He is whispering amidst the noise. He is lifting up the forgotten. May is not over yet, but time is running out. The breath has already come. The fire has already descended. Now, there is only one question left. Are you ready? If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.